Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from today or whenever you've got the chance to listen. I've been fortunate to tackle down a big pin in the legal sector, the Mystic Mac, Aaron McDonald. Aaron, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Paz.
You're welcome. So Aaron, you are now the third episode of It's All About the Grey podcast. And if anyone doesn't know you, I'd like to think that you are definitely a leading expert and industry leader really here in WA in the legal sector. And it's been a privilege being a part of that journey with you. We've only known each other not for quite a long time, but it feels like it has been a long time.
Yeah.
And to be absolutely frank with you, I'm a true admirer of the person you are and the business you've built. So on that note, maybe did you want to give us a bit of an explanation of who you are and what you do, if for those that don't already know who you are, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. Firstly, that's a very kind introduction. The feeling's mutual, Paz. My name's Aaron McDonald, 39 years of age. I'm 40 in 8 days. I'm Subiaco born and bred, so just grew up down the road. And yeah, professionally, I'm a lawyer, as you indicated. I work at a firm called Pragma that it just turned 10, and it helps people avoid and resolve disputes so they can focus on other things, really, is the predominant purpose of the business. And it's grown quite a lot, 45 people now, started from 10 years ago.
It's an impressive growth spurt.
Yeah.
So, being a lawyer, I'm just gonna get straight into it, Aaron.
Yeah.
So being a lawyer in, I guess, the modern day profession, the evolution of what is expected of a lawyer has changed. Is that true?
That's a good question. Possibly. I haven't really noticed it that way. Yeah, I mean, it's a very competitive market, particularly here in Perth. Like, clients want more and more, and you're trying to deliver open and frank advice for a reasonable price, and so I don't know. I can't really compare it to anything sort of 40 years ago, but I suspect it's probably got harder for it's a more competitive market than it was.
Yeah. I guess the position I'm taking is a misconception that lawyers come in and complicate things, when in fact it's the complete opposite, and that's what the practice, I guess, aspires to be, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. It often depends. I've seen some great deals done when lawyers have gotten out of the room as well. But I think, generally speaking, depending on which lawyer you're using, generally speaking, they should make your life easier.
Yeah. Okay, great. So on that point about making people's lives easier, typically speaking, as an accountant as well, you try and get to your lawyer before you have an issue.
Yeah.
Right. So do you want to, again, we've got a magnitude of different listeners, some that are either about to get into business or in business or have been in business for an extended period of time. So do you want to run us through how you positioned yourself in terms of getting in front of that client a little bit earlier?
Well, that's a really good point, and that's so true. The former Chief Justice was a guy named Wayne Martin of Western Australia. So he was the number one judge in Western Australia. And he had a saying, he's a KC, he had a saying that a pinch of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And what he meant by that was, engaging, and there's lawyers, there's lots of jokes about this, but there's lawyers that you like to go and see, and then there's lawyers that you don't like to go and see. So if you're buying a business or buying a mine or leasing a property, the transactional lawyers are the ones that you go and see, and you're usually in a good mood when you go and see them because you're doing a deal. You think you're going to make some money, and you probably are. And then there's the lawyers that you don't like to go and see, which are the ones that you've just been served with a writ, your company's going into voluntary administration. So those things. The lawyers that you like to go and see, the front-end transactional lawyers, generally speaking, it's so much cheaper to go and see those lawyers, and it's less money out of your pocket to engage with those lawyers than it is to go and engage with a lawyer when you've got a Supreme Court proceeding, going at 100 miles an hour. I'll give you an example. when you're going to set up a new business, and you know this well, Paz, through being an accountant, the work we do together, setting up a new business with a new business partner, always good to get a shareholders agreement in place. Just a basic rule book about how the business is going to run. If one partner wants to sell, how do you value the shareholding, all of those things. To engage a lawyer to prepare a shareholders agreement, whilst it might be a few $1,000s, it's actually really a drop in the ocean compared to not having that document, and then things don't work out and you're trying to work out how to split things up. That's where it's going to get a few $1,000s for a shareholders agreement looks very cheap when you're on the back end when things have gone the wrong way. So I've heard another very prominent businessman, John Poynton, has a saying where he says, start as you intend to finish. And that's always a good way to think, pretend as though it's an ASX listed business on day one, and you're doing everything by the book, because that's the way you want to finish.
And it's a good point you make about the basic rule book, Aaron. So I guess, what was the basic rule book of how your business started, start how you want to finish?
Well, I was 29 when I started Pragma, and which I think is how old you are now. And I was working at a large international law firm which treated me really, really well. But as I said at the start, Subiaco, born and bred. My old man was an accountant, a suburban accountant in Subiaco, had an office on the top floor of Crossways Shopping Centre in Subiaco. So I'd spend a lot of time as a kid riding my BMX down to his office. And the only reason I mention that is because he's quite an entrepreneurial chap, and that entrepreneurialism sort of rubbed off on me a little bit. And I always sort of wanted to be my own boss, and not to. Everybody's different, and I don't want to disparage sort of the big law firm model, but it's a very long road to get to the top there. And I just thought I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want to be a partner at an international law firm where I've got to report to lots of different people. I'd rather work for myself. So that's sort of how it all started. And I also thought there was a market gap there too. I remember when I started it, I thought to myself, I can do this cheaper, faster, better, more nimbler than the existing competition on the terrace. And where my real specialty lies, or where my expertise is, I'm predominantly trained as a dispute resolution lawyer, but I also work in transactional stuff. But the sad statistic about when business disputes arise is that 97% of the time, people resolve their disputes by consensus or some sort of deal. The sad thing about that statistic is that it usually happens after they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And so what I sort of came to the market doing, and what I'd actually been trained to do by the lawyer I was working for at the big law firm, was to mediate disputes. If you accept that statistic to be true, 97% of the time people resolve their disputes, which is true. The problem with that stat is that they're not doing it soon enough. So I was really trying to corner the dispute resolution, the litigation market, by getting deals done as quickly as possible when disputes arise. And they may not be, clients might not be thrilled to take a haircut when they're suing somebody for $100 and they do a deal for $50, for example. But at least it's out of their lives, if you know what I mean, and they can focus on their core business, rather than spending money on lawyers and time on lawyers.
Agreed, and I think that's probably a big reason why you've been so successful. It's fair to say is that, again, this is my personal experience, particularly with some of the clients that we've worked together on. It's all about getting an outcome.
Yeah,
and it's not, well, I can take you to the High Court and I can take you to this court and I can sue this guy and I'm going to get. It's not the way you operate, and I think in my opinion, that's where the real value lies. It's you typically want to go to a lawyer to get the outcome,
so true,
which ultimately isn't this long-winded 3-4 year 5 litigation,
yes,
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that probably back to my earlier point. That's where the market is, and that's where business owners really want to be aligned. Right? They want to align themselves with lawyers that get it, that want to get the outcome.
So true.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, mate. And again, it's a successful business. It's growing at a rapid rate. You've had that big law firm experience, which has probably positioned you to achieve what you've have achieved in such a short time frame. So, I guess you're building this successful business. It's just turned 10. You've well and truly passed the statistics of businesses failing in the first 5 years, which is fantastic. My question is, Aaron, what continues you wanting or driving to aspire to build this successful business?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it's sort of that is like all about the grey because it's hard to actually describe that. I mean, I do really enjoy my job. I do like growing the business. I like where I work. I like the people I work with. It's quite a young team in there. We're trying to do things differently. Every day brings up different challenges. I don't know where it's all going to end, but for right now, I'm just enjoying riding the wave and watching it grow. I think the firm will continue to grow. Whilst I say that, I don't think that's going to happen, in any meteoric pace. It's been pretty organic and gradual. I think that's going to continue for the near term. In my business, just like yours, it's all about the quality of the people that you've got around you. It's a service business. And when good people come along, then those that you want to snap them up and get them to, in the tent. But yeah, I just like the challenges of, running my own business, finding work, winning cases, trying to get outcomes for clients, like all of those things. It's an exciting business, but you can't really have an off day. Like you've got to be on like every single day. And I like that aspect of it too.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on it yourself, which again, in my opinion, I think it's a competitive point of difference is you've got a young team.
Yeah.
And as the face of the business, I guess, your job is to keep marching forward as the business owner, but to bring them on that journey.
Yes.
So on that point, which I'm full of questions today, Aaron, how are you bringing the team on your journey? And I know culture is big, and that's not because I work in your firm, it's because what I hear. So you want to touch upon that? Again, people see lawyers and accountants as, it's all officers, there's no fun and games, it's all serious business, you have to rock up, you have to be, sharp. But it's not necessarily like that, is it, really?
No, I think in our business, it's sort of a bit of a work hard, play hard culture. We've got, sensational offices, Subiaco, Rockaby Road, that we got a 1,300 square metre office and we kitted it out a couple of years ago and spent quite a lot of money doing it. And so I like to think sort of the physical environment itself is actually quite nice to be in. Secondly, I think the people are great, and you sort of got to have lots of great people in there that sort of, and it sounds a little bit cheesy, but sort of subscribing to the same values. So, utmost ethical integrity, trying to give back to the community. We're keen to sort of have a healthy environment. We care about each other and our clients, and getting all of those sort of things that are published on our firm's websites, and to be honest, many other law firms' websites. But you really got to live it and breathe it. Another truism that I think is really hits home for me is the fish rots from the head down. Mm. So if you're not sort of living the values and really pushing out the positive energy and setting a role model for everybody else, then I think that the other people within the business aren't gonna. You can't expect them to do that either. And so I think that's really important to really be, being your highest and best self.
Oh, it's a great point. The fish rots from the head down, in case anyone missed that. I couldn't agree with you more, Aaron. I think you're exactly right. You have to rock up to work and present to, I guess, the tune or the value of the business.
Yeah.
And importantly, you have to ensure that everybody else is singing from the same hymn book.
Yeah.
Right?
To be completely frank with you, Paz, I think you probably do that stuff better than I do. Like it's not something, I don't know whether some people have it more naturally than I do, but I am the sort of guy that likes to come to work close my door, do my work, get on the phone. And one of the reasons why I've had some luck with some really great people, I think of Nick Malone, who's one of the directors at our firm. He joined the firm as a law student. I wasn't terrifically good at I just noticed last week he got mentioned in Doyle's Guide, which is the peer rated, he's flying in terms of his progression. And other senior lawyers often tell me, oh, God, he's so impressive. I hope he's not listening to this. But I find that with him, for example, I didn't sit in a room and try and teach him things, but what I did with him is I would take him along with me to court, to meetings, sit in my room when I draft letters, and I use the phrase, he sort of osmotised the knowledge from me by just being around me.
Yeah, wow.
And I think that's sort of a little bit of my leadership style. I'm not the sort of guy that holds, 15 team meetings a week or anything like that. I probably need to do more of that, if anything, because it's not my strong suit. But I'm learning and I'm trying to be the best I can, I guess.
Yeah, and it leads on to a great question: is your style of leadership. Yeah. It's fair to say it's unique. Again, that's what sets you apart, is that whilst you're a lawyer, really at heart you see things and do things very differently. Again, this is purely my opinion and some of the feedback I've heard from some of the staff. So on that point, Aaron, building a business over 10 years takes time. Building a business with business partners can be challenging too. And you've now got two business partners, both Libby and Nick, which have obviously been fantastic. Part of the journey, being able to get to the position you are. Yep. But everybody is different and their style of leadership is different.
Yes.
So my question to you is how do you embed that style of leadership within the business culture?
Oh, that's a tough one, Paz. Like I think it just go back to the earlier answer of just trying to don't try to be somebody that I'm not, be
authentic.
Me. Yeah, but totally. And I won't say who told me this, but a very successful business owner once told me that, staff, if you don't think staff notice when you're having a bad day or you're not being your true self, like forget it. They notice everything. And I really believe that. So I think you really got to be your best self, be true to who you are. And and hopefully that rubs off on some other people.
Yeah, great. It is tough. Yes. It is tough to rock up every day, be a 100%. You've recently got a newborn baby. You've brought into this world, recently married. Yeah. Those nights must be tough.
Yeah.
I'm sure your wife does a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, she's amazing.
Which you're truly blessed with, but. Yeah. It is tough to rock up every morning, isn't it?
Yeah, and on that point, something that I've noticed as I've got older, and I certainly wasn't thinking like this when I started Pragma, but something that I've noticed since is that it's actually really important to look after yourself, like take time out for yourself, because you get stale otherwise. I haven't noticed this over the years, but if I was not taking a holiday for 6 months and I didn't realise that, I probably wasn't as self-aware of the fact that I was actually probably a little bit grumpy walking around the office. Whereas when you need to be really well balanced. And the older I get, the more I realise that it's actually really important to take time out for yourself. And you got a lot of plates spinning in the air, but make sure that you're excelling in all areas of your life, because it doesn't work where you excel in one and you don't excel in the others.
I couldn't agree with you more, Aaron, and I'm going to touch on it. For some of us that don't know, Aaron has done a few marathons in his life. maybe the earlier parts of life. Yeah. But Aaron, we were discussing Thursday. We had an event, a new business that you're associated with, the ProGrid launch party, which was fantastic. Yeah. And we had a discussion about that balance. And, again, these things happen from time to time. You might get a little bit out of kilt, but you recognised it and someone also gave you that insight. And you saw it as almost a positive because it was a wake-up call. It was like, you know what, you're right. Yeah. Maybe I do need to get back to that.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. So true. Like, you got to be the best version of yourself. And with the marathon thing, like I know that sounds quite impressive, so I won't tell any of the listeners what times I run. But one of the things I've found is that I've got one coming up in October, Chicago, is that like really important to have something to strive towards. Like I went for a run with a friend, Tim Hammond, yesterday, did 2 laps of Lake Munga together. There's no way in the world we would have run Lake Munga together if we weren't both running Chicago in 3 or 4 months and we're nervous about the fact that we've actually got to start putting in some work. Because if I don't have something to work towards, it's just not going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I think it's important that you set yourself these personal goals.
Yeah.
Because life isn't made to be easy, right? It's very easy to give up. It's very easy to go, this is too hard.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to put all my eggs in this one basket and not focus on anything else and hope for the best.
Yep.
And again, we're in a group together. We catch up on a monthly. And a big part of that is that balance, that work-life balance, that health piece, spiritual piece, etc. And I guess on that point, touching on the mainstream idea of what a lawyer is, long hours, you've got to dedicate 150% to it. Aaron, what insight would you give to the youth or the up and coming? Particularly, again, you've got a lot in your organisation, which is fantastic because you're giving them somewhat of a start that you may not necessarily had got yourself.
Yeah.
You've got a progressive workplace culture, it's probably fair to say. So what insight can you give to some of the young girls and guys that are coming through the ranks, particularly given the experiences that you've had?
Yeah. I think there's a place for everybody. Like I do work quite hard. Like I probably work most weeks 6 days a week. I try to take Saturday off. But that isn't for everybody. You know, some people want to work 3 days a week. I employ a lot of mums in my business who are some of the best and hard working lawyers we've ever had because they only want it three days a week and that's it. And that works perfectly for them and it works perfectly for us. So I think there's a place for everybody. Don't think that, a lot of people get, particularly young law students who come into the profession, get a bit turned off by sitting in a corner desk for 2 years doing discovery and never really seeing a client or, going down to court and doing what they do on suits. Like, I think that that can be a bit disheartening, but I think that there's a role for everybody with the law. And I think particularly if you find a good person to work towards a good mentor, then I think you're sort of halfway there.
Okay, so here we go. Now we're loading up. So talking about mentoring, leaning on for guidance.
Yep.
In your opinion, because I trust that you've got a mentor, why should or shouldn't you have a mentor?
Oh, 100%. Everybody should.
Everyone should.
Yeah, and I've sort of probably got multiple ones. Like I do. I sort of see that group that we're in, the business owners group, as sort of a mentorship because it's an open forum where people can talk about their concerns and seek sort of advice in a safe space and share things. My old man in particular, I always catch up with him and, nothing's out of bounds and you can talk about whatever you like. And he's got a really good business brain on him. So he sort of comes at things from different angles, a bit old school, probably too much, but I quite like that. And then, there's other people who I won't name who sort of will give me their views on things from time to time, particularly in the law when things crop up from time to time. You haven't approached it before. It's good to have a senior lawyer that you can sort of speak to about it. So that happens from time to time. So I think you need a wide array of people, particularly if you're going to make a big, important decision. You want to sound out and do a bit of a listening tour and
yes,
get as many opinions as possible before making a decision. Measuring twice and cutting once, really.
Yes.
So I think you'd be mad not to have something like that in your life.
Look, in the last episode with Brad, we talked about it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, look, maybe when you're practicing, not so much.
Yeah.
But in business, it should be encouraged, right?
Yeah.
And you speak to a lot of these, whether it be older or younger, it's really irrelevant. It's based upon experience, right?
Yeah.
And experiences they've had and how they've dealt with it. And I think you're right. The group that we are in, it's a very dynamic group.
Yeah.
In that we've all got different businesses at different stages, all arguably with different experiences.
Yeah. Everybody's got everybody's backs too.
Yeah.
And we really want to see each other succeed.
Yeah, correct. And you can embed that within the culture, right?
Yeah.
It's probably fair to say, again, a big part of the success of the business is about building that right culture. And a lot of business owners out there today, we've got this culture and we've got that culture. But there's nothing better than hearing it from staff themselves.
Yeah. I've got to say it's a constant thing. Like, you've got to constantly work at it. It's not something you can just sort of set and forget. We are speaking completely openly and frankly. I don't think we've always had. I think we're in a really great place at the moment, but I don't think we've always had it perfect. If I'm being critical of ourselves,
Yeah.
Like, there's been moments where I don't think it's gelled, and like I can sort of see now with the benefit of hindsight why that was. So yeah, you live and learn.
Yeah. No, you do. You do. And talking about living and learning, there's always a grey art in growing this business, and it's probably fair to say you've made some mistakes, you've learned a thing or two.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to touch on it. The legal profession, it's changing, it's evolving. You need to be at the forefront. You need to be on your game. Do you ever see AI or anything crazy taking over, or do you see more of it as a value add to the service offering or an opportunity to develop efficiencies?
Yeah, no, certainly the latter. Yeah. AI doesn't fade me one bit.
Yeah, great.
I'm really impressed by it. Like, I asked it the other day to write a fictional letter of demand for me, and I actually was quite impressed with the letter it wrote. So I think it probably outdoes some lawyers in that regard. But in terms of sort of growing the business, like, I think like AI is going to sort of present opportunities as to how can you use AI to add value to your clients, you know, and I'm still trying to work that out myself, to be honest. I'm open to ideas, but I think a lot of the time with this, there's always this talk about innovation within the law. And there seems to be, to me, a lot of talk about it and not much action. And, you know, I was reading books years ago from a guy called Professor Richard Susskind, who's like the global authority on how the law is going to change and innovate. And I don't think much has changed in the last 5 or 10 years at all. You know, and one of the things he says, and he's based in England, but he is the leading authority on how the law might change and our jobs might change. He sort of says that, well, if anything's going to change, it's the advocate's role, sort of, you know, the lawyer that goes to court, who's probably going to have his role changed last. It's the lawyers that are sort of doing a basic lease or something like that, or spit it out of AI, that they're probably got greater concern than somebody like me. So I think that's true. In terms of growing the business, one of the things I've done, and I've told you this before, Pat, so you know this, but like in the law, it's unlike every lodging your BAS or doing your tax return. Like, it's not something that happens quarterly. You know what I mean? Like, you might need a lawyer once every 10 years, and when that opportunity arises, I in my mind, I reverse engineer it. So what do I have to do in order to be on the tip of somebody's tongue when that moment occurs? And all I've really done is to be as omnipresent as possible, you know. So I'm posting on LinkedIn, you know, I'm doing email marketing for a while there, and my best man at my wedding even made a joke about it at my wedding, about how my ads would follow you around the internet while you're trying to read the newspaper, and so like I'm just trying to just keep front of mind really, because, and then also like Perth's such a small town, you need to do a really good job with everybody, because the best work you ever get is the work that where somebody said, "Oh, I used Aaron, he was great. You should go see him." And you know, and vice versa. It works the opposite if something hasn't worked out. Yeah.
Again, you've raised a couple of fantastic points, which I'm going to drill into further. So, first and foremost, I think the ideology of I need a lawyer once every 10 years, in my opinion, I'd like to think anyways that the advice we provide is whole.
Yeah.
It's not just here's the accounting advice, that's all you need to know. We're always trying to impart, I guess, with our clients, it's important we seek legal advice or you know, financial advice or whatever it is. So you become more well-rounded, I guess, and so does your decision-making. And in that point, the omnipresence, I guess, aspect of it is you need to be present. And a lot of business owners may not have necessarily had the opportunity you've had, but you've had the benefit of building successful marketing campaigns, seeing those marketing campaigns come off. But let's not forget where that all started. And we touched on this the other day about the EDMs and people's emails. So, Aaron, so tell us, to get to the point that you got to, you tested the waters, didn't you?
Well, I don't know what story you're talking about there, but I mean, when I I think it was the 29th of January 2014, I started Pragma, and I did an email newsletter at 6 a.m. to every single person in the world that I knew. I went through all of my emails, and I said there was a photo of me with my chest puffed out, and I sort of like, this is what I'm doing. I'm here, set up my own business. I was a sole trader. I thought that there would be, or everybody I knew would constitute thousands of people. It actually constituted about 280 people, which is still quite a lot, but much less than I thought. And I had 0 clients. So then, as the years have gone by, when I've met other professionals like yourself, I try to be religious in the fact that I will send out an email newsletter once a month, letting people know this is what we've been up to. Here's some free knowledge that might add some value to your life. And I try and do that once a month. And every person that I come across in my travels, I add them to the mailing list where they give me their business card, and they can obviously unsubscribe if they're not interested. And some of them do, but at least I'm giving it a crack.
No, you're right, and that's the exact story that I was referring to. Is when you first started the business, you just took a stab in the dark and said, you know what, I'm just going to at least send people an email to let them know I now exist.
Yeah.
Now you've taken it to the next level that not only people do not know that I exist, people now see me as a source of, knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is that you can't expect people to add value to your life if you're not adding value to theirs.
That's Great point.
That's a big thing in my mind. I see a lot of lawyers saying, "Oh, I got no clients." I'm like, "Well, what value are you adding to their life, the prospective clients that you want?" And so I find, and I've always found this quite interesting, but I use MailChimp like most businesses do, to do an email newsletter. What blows me away about MailChimp is that if you go to the back end of it after you send a newsletter, you can see who's opening what. And, back when the business was much smaller, I'd sort of look at this stuff. I don't have really time to look at it now. But what always amazed me is that Pragma had won such and such an award, or so-and-so had been promoted. But then here's 5 tips to remember when drafting your shareholders agreement. I can promise you right now, the article that is clicked the most is the one where the reader is going to get something out of it. People don't care if so-and-so won an award or so-and-so got promoted. They're, in the 15 seconds you've got to grab their attention when they get that email, they're saying, what's in this for me? What can I read that I can turn into my everyday life or my business and add value for myself?
Again, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you've raised such a critical aspect, is that when you're growing a business, particularly growing, you need to give. You just need to give to the point that people are like, they're almost indebted and they go, I must do something with Aaron. I'm reading all these articles. I must at least engage him for something. Yeah. And it's crazy because the misconception is, well, I'm here and I'm doing a great job, so I should get engaged. No. It's in fact quite the opposite.
I agree. That's totally. And I certainly have used that a lot.
That's great, Aaron. That's fantastic. So I guess we've covered off a lot, and I've been again, as always, really grateful for your time and for the knowledge you've imparted with not only myself over the years, but hopefully now with the listeners and all viewers. So I guess, Aaron, in closing, one tip of advice, looking back 10 years ago, starting the firm, what would you have done different?
I think that hindsight's perfect vision. It's going to sound a bit arrogant, actually. I probably wouldn't have done much different. I mean, obviously, there's things now I look back on that I would have done differently. But back your gut instinct, I think, on a lot of decisions. Like when you're unsure about something, if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't right.
Yeah.
Oh, Paz, you got me on the spot there. I don't know if I've got anything
That's
good.
okay. That's all right. Look, at the end of the day, I think the point I'm trying to raise is that notwithstanding you've built that successful business, hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, it's important that you do reflect.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, going back to your earlier point about making mistakes, I think don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, one thing about starting Pragma was the legal profession in particular, and in particular in 2014, I think it's changed now in 2024, but in 2014, there was 0 29-year-olds starting up their own law firm. And now in 2024, like I'm not suggesting I've started some sort of trend, but there's a lot of the gig economy, people, not just the legal profession, lots of different professions, people are going out by themselves. And you sort of, law firms are known for guys with white hair and, they're not known for 29-year-old guys sort of going out and trying to shake up the industry and trying to do things differently. And I think that it's important to be selfish in those decisions and actually to do what's best for you. I think not being afraid to make mistakes when making a decision like that, particularly at 29 when you've got really nothing to lose.
Back yourself in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just continue to back yourself in every single day.
Yes.
Right. Let's be real. As business owners, that's a big part of our job.
Yes.
Is that now we're probably just more educated because we've had, I guess, a bit more experience backing ourselves in and either doing it successfully or not doing it so successfully.
Yes.
So you're always making mistakes every day.
Yeah.
But it's the reaction that probably, I guess, tailors you as the business leader.
Yes.
Right. And you have to react better.
Yep.
And you're quicker and you're faster and arguably you're more resilient because if you actually look back, right, the decisions or mistakes you made today and 10 years ago are completely different. And I guess arguably the backtrack of a large decision that gets made is catastrophic.
Yes.
When you've got 45 odd people behind you, right?
Yeah.
But when you started the firm, you go, well, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. But again, the importance of operating in the grey, looking at the positive side of everything, and just making calculated risks.
Yes.
That's really all they are. They're not even mistakes now. It's just a calculated risk. Yeah. You know what you're about to get yourself into.
Yes.
And it's just about pushing forward, right?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Aaron, mate, absolute pleasure. As always, I thoroughly enjoy, chatting with you. It's fair to say we chat a fair bit these days.
Yes.
If for anyone that doesn't know who you are, which I'd be absolutely surprised, who are you? Where can they find you? And anything else that you want to throw out there?
Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on the pod. Stoked to be on here, and obviously listen to your earlier episodes, which I thought were great. Just Google Pragma if you want to get in touch with me. Pragma.law is our website, and thank you.
And accept or reject the cookies.
You don't have that, but accept
the cookies. Thank you so much, Aaron. Really appreciate it, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. And I look forward to working with you more.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Man.
Thank you.